Thank you all for attending. This is a repeat of a presentation that we started back in 2019. For those of you that were back then, we've been researching. Sorry, I'll start over again. So we've been researching since the very early days of wine in a can, and we're now up to our fourth survey. The three of us in WIC Research are professors, we're academics, so we come at this from an academic point of view, not necessarily from a wine point of view, although we do have wine expertise with my partners, not so much me. What I'd like to talk about is a little bit on the history, for those of you that don't know some of the history, a little bit on canning, because I know that's a big topic, and Jim is here following me. He'll go into much more detail on canning, and then get into the meat of our research and what we find. And finally, I'll wrap it up with the blind taste test that we're going to do. This will be the first in Europe and only the second in the world. And so I've got the four cans that we're doing. It's identical wine from a bottle or a can. And all we want you to do is taste A, taste B. You don't know what you're tasting. Which do we like? But 1936, the very can on the very far of the podium. That's a 1936 can from Acampa Winery in California. So nearly 100 years ago, the first can of wine occurred. Now, it was a steel can. Obviously, it had some lining and some rust issues. But nonetheless, it indicated that they canned this wine 6 months after the first beer in the world, in the United States, was canned. So the wine industry has always been very aggressive in following the consumer. That's what we study. Vintage is another can from 1936. Things didn't go smoothly until about the 1980s, when there was the gas crisis, and the airlines were trying to lighten the plane as much as possible. What most people don't know in this picture, Summit was owned by Schlitz Brewing, the major beer company at the time. And you now know about AB InBev and their Babe wine in can. So history repeats itself. California Cellars, that was owned by Taylor Wine, the #1 winery in the United States. And Taylor Winery at the time was owned by Coca-Cola. So back in the 80s, one of the largest beer companies and the largest soda companies in the United States owned and canned wine. Things really started taking off in Australia in 1996 with Baroque's activity, Sophia 2002. Really, in the last 10 years, it's blossomed. Infinite Monkey, Underwood, so on and so on and so on. In the United States, all the top wineries, bar none, all the top wineries have wine in a can. The top selling bottled varietals are available in a can. The top wine distributors in America distribute wine in a can. And now two major beer companies, AB InBev, the largest in the world, are making wine in a can. And the top beer distributor in the United States is distributing. And so what you see over the last 10 years is the maturation of this industry by all the support organizations, the canners, the distributors, the retailers. It's now full-blown business. We project that by 2025, 10% of all wine sales will be in a can. We've noticed the growth. We track the number of winemakers and the number of SKUs, different individual products that they come out with. And you'll notice that there's been dramatic increase. Last year, it slowed down to only 40% year-over-year increase. Something must have happened last year. I'm not sure what it was. But the year before that, you can see the growth. As I mentioned, we're currently at 700 wineries and 1,800 as of today, and 36 countries. I won't go through a lot on the canning because Jim, I think, is going to cover this, but these are some of the things that you want to pay attention These are technical terms that you want to ask your canner about staling and scalping and tainting and so on. I would recommend that if you want to know about cans and can linings, that you contact Cornell University. Dr. Gavin Sachs, that I've worked with, is the leading expert on can lining. And in fact, this year, their research shows that red wine is most adaptable to a can. 2 years ago, it was more of the whites. Now the research shows reds hold up much better in a can. You can do mobile canners, there are outsourcing, and you can do in-house, depending on the volume that you're using. Remember, when we talk about canning, it's not only the can itself, but whether you put a paper, a sleeve on it, or you directly print on it. As you can see, one of our direct print cans. Difference being cost and volume. Don't forget about your exterior packaging. Very often, that's what the consumer sees first. Spend a lot on the can, but don't forget the exterior packaging. Do you want snap tops? Do you want a 2-pack? Do you want a 4-pack? There's a 3-pack. How much money do you want to spend on your packaging? And you have 4 sides usually to tell your story on a package, which is different than on a round can. I've got some videos out there. So let's get to why you all want to hear what I'm talking about. Just as some background, we've got a lot of firsts in our industry. I'm not going to say we're the leading wine and can market researcher, but we've done a lot of firsts. We're actually consulted on a Hollywood movie. I'm hoping that it will come out before long, and it deals with wine and cans, so pay attention. Again, of course, Hollywood, you never know how things go there, but we'll see. So in 2018, what we found were 6 drivers, and primarily because, as I showed you in the history, the industry was somewhat new. So convenience, occasion expansion, I can take this different places I couldn't take it before. It was made out of aluminum, which is infinitely recyclable. In other words, you melt it down, you make a can. When you're done, you melt it down and make another can. Nothing happens to the same volume of aluminum forever. But we wanted to look at visual and branding aspects because some people said, well, I don't like wine in a can because it tastes like tin. It tastes like the can. And that was true earlier. But as the industry has matured, as it's gotten better, you'll see it's about the wine in the can, not the packaging. If you put good wine in a can or a bottle, it's good wine. If you put bad wine in a bottle or a can, it's bad wine. So it's that simple. So we did a survey with 18 cans, and we actually showed pictures to the consumers. We did about 100 questions, 1,700 people, so it was a very large, extensive survey, a lot of detail. We looked at age, we looked at many, many variables, and we showed them pictures. So when you see a picture like this, what comes to mind? What do you think of? And of course, we could look at their results by age, by gender, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things we found out that 42% of people did not even know of any wine in a can brand. So awareness back in 2018 and 2019 was very low. They might have heard about it, but they could not give a brand. And that tells me that as an industry, there needs to be more awareness. There needs to be more advertising. You have to treat it like a regular business and make sure you advertise, or they won't remember you. So our latest survey, again, another 1,000 respondents. We used basically the same questions, but we asked more detailed image questions. And this time we added 24 cans, different cans, but we included the front picture and the rear picture because we wanted to find out, what do consumers read on the label? What is important? The picture's nice on the front, we get that, but what are you reading to help you make the decision, because now it's not just convenient that it's in a can, but I want to know about the wine that I'm tasting. Good wine in a can is good wine. So these are the companies that we used, and you'll recognize some of them. Some very interesting graphics from around the world. Now, I know you've already had some wine, so if you get dizzy by listening to my presentation, I apologize. So what did we find? Well, first of all, the top reasons on why people liked, bought, tried wine in a can, first of all, was taste, not convenience. Now it's taste. Quality. And then, of course, portability, convenience, and they want value. They're now becoming more of a normal, that's not a good word, a more mainstream consumer item. They're looking for value. The novelty is past that stage. Novelty was back in 2011 with infinite monkey theorem. What kind of name is that for a wine? Infinite monkey theorem. We know what that is. It's Shakespeare and a monkey at a keyboard. But that novelty is past. Taste, quality, and to some extent, value. Which is different than what we found earlier. When we break it out by gender, females and males both say taste and quality is important. The number one and number two. Women's like the recyclability aspect. Males, not so much. They want value. And of course, then convenience, and there you see value again. So there is a difference, as you'll see through the research, between genders, between ages, between different variables. We took a look at taste, and we brought out which generations like which types of taste. Which ones prefer quality? So we can tell you whether ZX or whether Gen X or Gen Y is more valued in terms of quality, as well as portability. And I won't go into all these data, because as we publish the data, that's when people really look at the details. This is not quite the audience at this point of time, but we certainly will be glad to talk to you afterwards. Convenience, there you can see, again, shifting. And value. And we put in brand image as well, even though it wasn't one of the tops, because that's what we were interested in to see what the brand was saying. Overall, females said, yes, I've heard of wine in a can. I'm aware of wine in a can, 63%, which is 25 percentage points more than what they said a year ago. A year ago, 38% of women had heard of wine in a can. Now 63%. That's a huge jump in being aware of wine in a can. Males, not so much of a big difference, but they're learning more. You're aware of it. Did you try it? Females and males, fairly consistent increase, but consistent over 2019. Yes, I tried it. But the money question, did you buy it? 78% of females said, yes, I physically bought. And that's up 16 points from 2019. And males are around 50%. So what that tells us, try it. Get your consumers to try it. Trying leads to buying. How much are you willing to pay? Well, this is interesting. We broke it out by generation, boomers, X, Y, Z, and so on. And you'll notice that 250 size, you've got 187, 250, and 375. At 250, you get an upward spike. Baby boomers, it's pretty much linear. That's the bottom blue line. But the other three ages, when you hit, first of all, it's steeper, but when you hit 250, the larger cans, it rises. So that is telling us, Look at Gen Z and Gen Y. They'll pay $11 and $12 for a can, the red can. That's a half a bottle. So they're willing to pay $22 a bottle for wine in can, if it's good, if it tastes good. Remember, it's not the novelty anymore. They're not going to pay $11 and $12 for the novelty, but if it's good wine, they will. Again, if we break it out by sizes, Gen Ys are willing to pay more, Boomers less. 250, Gen Z and Y, again, are at the higher end of the scale. And finally, 375, which was the previous data that I showed. So what are they buying? Number one, rosé. Still or sparkling, rosé. That's 43% of wine in can of what they're saying they buy. Not what is scanner data from the cash register, but this is what people are saying, this is what I buy. Whites, reds, and sparkling whites. And again, this is from a survey of almost 3,000 people, which is very large by statistical methods. Where are you drinking it? Well, chilling with my friends and family in someone else's house. Casually at home with a significant other, and so on. And as a marketer, I look at this, and a researcher, I look at this and go, 38% of our respondents are just taking it easy. They want taste and quality at home with family, with friends. 23% like the convenience aspect. I'm on a boat, I'm on a beach, I'm somewhere where I should not have a bottle and a corkscrew and 2 glasses. And 21% said I'm at some kind of a party. And if you've ever been to a party recently, you know having lots of bottles of wine is not the same as having lots of cans around for lots of different reasons. So when you dig down into our data, you find very important insights. But again, this reinforces that we're now, after 10 years, into the stage where the novelty is worn off. It's a solid category. You have to put good wine in a can. Otherwise, whether it's European wine or not, European wine has to match the rest of the world. You can't say, well, wine in a can is new in Europe. We can get away with some bad wine. No. You've got to have the good wine and match the existing wine that's out there. And you can do that. Wine from Europe is fantastic. We asked them, where do you purchase it? Not where would you want, where did you buy that? And notice, interesting, in 2019, the number one answer was in stores, same as 2020. But in 2019, number 2 is wineries. COVID killed the wineries. What took its place was online and the direct-to-consumer. But even within that, notice, women bought their wine from stores and wineries. And when we tease out some of the data, part of that is because they want to know what they're drinking. They want to ask questions of a more knowledgeable person at the winery or at the wine store. Males tend to, again, want the taste, want the quality, want the value, but they go more for the brand and reputation. I heard about it. I liked it. I just want to get it online. I know what I want. I don't need to talk to somebody at the store for education. So women tend to go for information. They want to know what's in the can, how did you produce it, where did you produce it, et cetera, and prove to me and explain to me how you're an expert, because I'm drinking the wine, I'm not drinking the can. And men look for what's a popular brand. We looked at price, and in this case, we looked at price by gender. No difference. between male and female. We looked at price based on age. For the 187 size, no difference in age between the genders. Male and female just bought it across the generations. But when you get to the larger sizes, the 250 and the 375 milliliter, Gen Y, and then followed by Gen Z, but Gen Y pays more for their wine. They're willing to pay more, had paid more for their wine and can than the other age cohorts. Again, it's got to be good wine. Then we asked the question about social media. Look at this. Women talk about the wine in a can that they bought, purchased, saw. They tell their friends. They tell their online world. Men, not so much. So all of this information can help you really target who your consumer is. And as you'll see, and this is important because word of mouth online, word of mouth, and reputation are related. Research that we've done for a different, not wine and cans, but in a different topic, shows that the image that you create on your website goes a long way towards consumers actually gaining a good reputation about whatever it is you have on your website, whatever you're selling. We looked at on-label information. Remember, I told you we turned the cans around to see what people printed and what people read. Overall, they wanted to know, is it dry or sweet? They looked at the graphic design. They wanted to know about the alcohol content. But when we broke it up by gender, and again, we can break it up by gender, by many, many different variables, subjective wine knowledge. When we broke it up by gender, males care about where the wine is coming from. Okay, what's that reputation of the wine? Where women want to know, is it dry, sweet? Tell me about the wine. Tell me about the tasting notes. This goes back to the stores and the winery. They want to know what they're drinking. Men, not so much. Reputation and branding, buzz. Men said they preferred wine in a can that came from Italy. That was their number one region. So if they find some Italian wine in the can, that would be their go-to wine, perhaps. Followed by France. California, of course. Followed by Spain. So if you're this is overall, okay? Italy, France, California, Spain. When people read the back of the cans, that's what they're looking for. Where'd it come from? Where's the terroir? Now let's take a look at Gen Z, just in particular. Let's break that out because I know a lot of people are interested in how can we get the new generation started buying wine? Because the old people are buying less and less and less as they get older and older and older. We need to get the new Gen Z in. So let's see what they're doing. Their drivers, again, taste, quality, portion control, and variety. They want to know about alcohol content on the label. They like to have a nice design. They like dry sweet scale. So this is overall, not just the females that I mentioned before, but this is overall wine description. Drink by date. Any of you that can, do you put a drink by date? $11.8. Oh, I'm going to have this tonight. This is fresh. This is as fresh as you can get. But this gets to one of the questions that was asked earlier on how wine keeps on the shelf. You want to pay attention to that date. You want to make sure that your distributors and your distribution channel goes through and checks the date and pulls off older wine. Don't let it sit there, because if the wine in can sits there too long, then when your consumer tastes it for the first time, it will taste not so good. So check the wine on can. And our research shows that the drink by date is very important for Gen Z. They don't want to waste their money. They want to know how fresh it was. Within Gen Z, we broke out and we said, okay, let's look at gender. Pretty much the same. Males worry about the drink by date more than females, but pretty similar. Looking just at Gen Z, remember we did the information awareness, tried, purchased. So now we're going to do that for Gen Z. Females, 70% said they're aware of it. In terms of trying it, again, more females, but a closer range. 75% of Gen Z females. If they try it, if they read it, if they understand what they're drinking, well, they read it before they buy it. They understand what they're drinking. They try it, they like it, and they buy it. Price that Gen Zs are willing to pay, up to $11 a can. So as I mentioned, we're doing a blind taste test. We're in booth, let me back up. In 2019, it was the first in the world that we did. And what we found was, I'll show you in a second, we had 4 wineries. One winery had 2 different entries. And we, Belangelo is from the Great Finger Lakes of New York. Coyote Moon was from upper New York, up near the Canadian border. And Lieb Cellars was, are they Long Island? Yeah, Long Island. So for some reason we ended up with 3. It's probably because of the time I was working in New York and convenience factor on my part, but it doesn't matter. We did a Chardonnay, Riesling, a Rosé, and a Moscato. What we found was pretty much statistically equal. 48% preferred a bottle, 45% preferred a can, and 5% couldn't tell the difference. But notice within that range and within the varietals, you have some differences. For the dry Riesling and the dry Rosé, 26 and 31%, there was no difference, which were the larger than the other varietals. So stand A42, right up before you go to all the tasting, we have a stand. We were doing it this morning. We're going to be doing it again all day tomorrow. We have 4 wines that I've brought up here that you can look at. Rough Day wine is from Bulgaria. That's a Sauvignon Blanc Rosé. Labanzi is from South Africa. That's a Chenin Blanc. Most Wanted, it's actually bottled in the UK, but it's actually a South African wine. That's a Sauvignon Blanc. And Bridge Lane, we're doing again. Bridge Lane is what we had done in 2019 in the US, because again, as academics, we want to compare. So let's see what people in America tasted in a blind taste and what people at the show here taste. And that's a red. So to wrap it up, the market is more aware of wine in a can, which means the whole production supply chain is building out. There's cans, there's all the support activity you need to get into the business, wider distribution. It's still growing. But as it gets mature, you've got more competitors. We all know about Anheuser-Busch InBev, the biggest beer company in the world. Do you know that ABI has 6 wine in a can brands? Do you know that Anheuser-Busch InBev bought their own Argentina vineyard? If that doesn't speak commitment to a segment, I don't know what does. Better wines are being put out. L&I wine just came out, and it's noted on the back that it is a brand crafted by the master sommelier in the U.S. We only have one, and this is his wine in a can. He's put his name Okay? Emmanuel, he's put his name on wine in a can. That speaks to commitment. From this research, packaging is no longer the asset you want to focus on, it's the wine inside the wine in a can packaging. Where are people consuming it? Just chilling and around water and parties. Females are large buyers. They like rosé, they like the 250, and they like to talk about it on social media. As we've said, awareness leads to trial, leads to purchase. Females buy at stores and wineries because they, in part, want to seek information about what they're buying, and males tend to buy online because of the brand and reputation. Gen Z and Y will pay more for all three sizes. That's what they're telling us. And the gender doesn't matter. And if you notice when I give this presentation in France, because French sometimes don't think wine in a can is necessary, although you want to talk to Anne here. The first wine in a can was 1917 during World War I, when the French, that was their rations for the day. So it's probably, you might not come back from the war, but at least you won't notice while you're there. That's the ultimate wine in a can. So, questions? Thank you.